ADHD Rewired, episode number 42. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. For as long as I can remember, there were always certain things that seemed harder for me to do. And for most of my life, I didn't know why. I mean, in some ways, I always felt smart, but then in other ways, like my grades, not so much. I wish I can remember exactly what it was that I said to my parents that convinced them to let me go back to school after I just finished a semester with a 1.8. All I know is that I will be forever grateful. And I will be forever grateful for that dinner that I had with that girl whose name that I've been trying for years to remember. She told me about ADHD, and what she described was the first time that I ever heard anybody put into words what it felt like to be inside my brain. I honestly don't remember exactly what she said, but I do remember how I felt. I can remember like it was yesterday. That feeling of hope and possibility, of wonder and excitement, validation and eagerness. I scheduled an evaluation as soon as I could. When I talked to other people with ADHD about that first experience they had with medication and what it was like to feel normal for the first time, well, that feeling is amazing. But it took me years to realize that productivity fueled by Adderall was not going to be enough. I set out to learn everything I could about ADHD, the brain, productivity, time management, organization, and goal setting. When I started that journey, I was doing it for myself. I knew if I was going to get through grad school and have a successful career, I needed to learn how to plan and organize my time and set priorities and not get sidetracked by little unimportant details. My journey, probably much like yours, has been filled with a lot of ups and downs. I've experienced failures, and I've had some tough lessons learned. But I've learned to appreciate these obstacles and challenges that have come my way and to make something good out of them. Does everything happen for a reason? Well, to be honest, I don't think so. But what I do think is we can find reason and make meaning out of the things that happen. Because I'm proof that when you have the right tools and the right kind of understanding, that things can get a lot better. And you can do the things that you've always wanted to do. Whether that's going back to school, starting your own business, tackling that project that feels overwhelming, but that you think about all the time, or maybe even starting a podcast. Whatever it is, don't let your ADHD get in the way. Get your ADHD rewired. I told you last week that I would be announcing something free and cool. As I'm getting ready to launch the next ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group, I'm putting together a brand new series of videos, articles, and webinars where I'm going to share with you exactly how I do productivity. I'm going to share with you my favorite tools and my favorite apps. And if you stop by one of the 2 webinars that I'm going to be hosting, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join the ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group for up to $170 off the full rate. If you've already joined my email list, thank you, and you don't have to do anything. You will be getting some new content in your email inbox shortly. No, wait, I take that back. You have to check your email. But if you don't currently get my email newsletter, which I don't send out that often, go to my website, erictivers.com. mp3.com and wait for the bright shiny object to pop up in the bottom right corner. Or you can text Tivers to 22828. That's my last name, Tivers, to the number 22828. Thanks for listening. And now, let me bring you today's interview. But first, I want to thank Audible for giving listeners of this podcast a free audiobook download. To get your download, go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Before we get into the interview, I just want to tell you really quickly that the interview you are about to hear is available. You can get the video of it, including some kind of before and after I hit record outtakes. And we actually have a kind of a long conversation about just some business stuff and some other things that you might be interested in. So if you are, go check out the show notes to this episode. That's at erictivers.com/42. And now, here's Mary D. Sclar, who's going to help us see time. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I am very excited to be talking with my guest today, who is Mary D. Sclar. And I first got introduced to Mary D. Through one of her books that I found at a CHAD conference 2 years ago. And the book now has a new name. But before we get into that, let me tell you just a little bit about Mary D. And then she will correct anything that I mess up. So, Mary D. is a time management educator. She's an author, speaker, and consultant, and she is an entrepreneur. And we love entrepreneurs on ADHD Rewired because, you know, it's one of those paths that we can kind of create our own kind of zone of a genius. And I think that it's wonderful. So I love talking to other entrepreneurs. As an educator, she has helped families and individuals overcome struggles with time management for over 20 years, which is why we're talking to her. She's an author of a number of different books, including one called Seeing My Time, Visual Tools for Executive Functioning. And this is for executive functioning success. And this is a curriculum that she developed. And she has a new one out called 50 Tips to Help Students Succeed. Develop your students' time management executive skills for life. So, and I didn't realize, Mary D., that that curriculum that you created actually won an award at last year's CHAD conference.
Well, the year that you were there, 2 years ago, it was, I can't remember the exact title of it. Some kind of special product thing or something. It was
a big gold star.
It was a little gold star. I got a gold star. Yes.
So welcome to the podcast. Now, here's your opportunity to correct anything that I messed up in your introduction.
I think you did a very good job, actually.
Thank you. I actually practiced it once before calling you.
I'm impressed. I never practice things once before I do them.
I usually don't either. So, and I think part of us, I'm really excited to talk to you. I know we talked a little bit yesterday as we're kind of getting ourselves organized on what we wanted to talk about, and I did share with you as we kind of created our plan that the plan that we create for the show is usually Plan B, because I just like to have conversations on the show because I think we get a lot more out of that. And when we kind of take too many rabbit holes, that's when we look at the plan and say, okay, where do we want to get back on track?
Okay.
So, Mary, again, I'm just thrilled to have you. Now, one of the things that is interesting as we were talking, and I was looking through your profile on LinkedIn and looking at all the presentations and trainings that you've done. But you did share with me yesterday that you're kind of an introvert.
Yes. I am an introvert, and from an entrepreneur's point of view, it's a challenge. I've always described, I can't even talk about what I do. That was the hardest thing, was figuring out how to talk about what I do, because like you said, an entrepreneur and somebody like you and I, we have our own little spark and our own little genius, and we create our own little niche. Mm-hmm. And it's so novel that it's hard to find language to describe it. But an introvert, yes, very much so. My work that I did with Seeing My Time, the curriculum program, really came out of challenges with my own brain. Okay, this is 20 years ago. I, by background, am a school teacher, and I taught. I'm a reading specialist. Although I haven't been in a classroom for quite a long time, like a galaxy far, far away. I was doing a private practice teaching kids who had dyslexia. And I was also running a volunteer program at an elementary school to help volunteers teach reading. But that kind of got me onto this interesting path where I am today, believe it or not. That's how life works, is I was looking for insights into how to teach kids to learn to read. And I ended up at the University of Portland, where Dr. Ellen Arwood works. And she had these interesting ideas about the brain and how we learn and how we think. And while I went to learn about reading, after I was there for a week, I went up to her on Friday and I said, Ellen, I came here to teach kids how to read, but you've given me this little tiny glimmer into how my brain works with time, and I'll pay you anything. You want my firstborn, because I was 40 years old and I described myself as an underachieving procrastinator. It's like I have all this creativity going on in my brain, but it was in piles, in boxes, and files, and, it was all over the place. And I couldn't seem to get things done in the way that I really wanted to do.
Now, Mary D, I'm sure that most of my listeners right now are thinking, great, well, he is another guest on with ADHD. And when I asked you yesterday, do you have ADHD? Well, why don't you just share with us what you told me yesterday?
Well, yesterday I said, I don't think so. I don't know. And
which I was sort of surprised by, based on the way I described it is you kind of dropped hints throughout some of your books, but you didn't directly say that that you have ADHD. And some people are, they look at treating and responding to actual challenges, not diagnoses. And we kind of talked about, I do like diagnoses because it gives you a starting point, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what to do.
Right.
So go ahead.
So I asked my husband last night, and the reason why it's interesting to ask my husband is he's a retired pediatrician, who used to diagnose ADHD, and so he looked at me and he goes, no, you don't have ADHD. He goes, you probably have a language processing disorder, and you probably have, I know you have working memory issues.
Okay, so language processing disorder and working memory issues. Tell me about the language processing disorder.
Oh, well, language processing disorder comes from having challenges with word retrieval. So it can be difficult for me to come up with the right words in certain circumstances. Or the ones that drive my husband crazy is when my brain pulls up a word that is closely similar, either conceptually or it starts with the same initial. If it's a word that comes up that's similar, but it's the wrong word. But what's fascinating about my brain is that I internally hear the right word. So I am oblivious to the fact that I have just said something that makes no sense. Okay. So if it makes no sense, my husband gets it. He goes, oh, there goes her brain. It just went, he calls it my in my brain. And, but when I do make sense, but it's not what I wanted to say, then the poor man thinks he's doing what I asked him to do, or he thinks he knows what I'm talking about, but I'm actually not talking about what I said. It's kind of dyslexia of spoken language.
Well, then that's kind of what I was thinking, and I was actually, I think it was this past year at the ADA conference. I was talking to Roberto Olivardia, who was one of my past guests and has become a friend of mine. He's at Harvard, and he was talking about dyslexia and dysgraphia, and he was describing dysgraphia to me. And it was sounding very, very familiar. Yes. And that was it. To me, that sort of sounds like what you're describing is this dysgraphia. It's see, the brain, Eric, is so complicated. Yes. It's all interwoven, and that's where I have challenges with trying to put specific labels on specific things because they're so interconnected. And so I'd never actually put together before the idea that I had dyslexia of oral language.
I'm not sure anybody's ever said that about it, but that's really how it manifests itself. Because when someone who has dyslexia, for instance, reads something, their brain will find a word, and if they don't know it, their brain will substitute something for it that looks something like it, okay? Mm-hmm. And if semantically it's making sense, then they'll just keep moving forward, thinking that they know what they're reading, but actually they don't, because they've gone off on a whole nother pattern.
No, Mary, as you're describing this too, I had like 4 different conversations that just came to mind of that I had with people about this very issue, and I am just imagining right now that people are listening to this and going, oh my gosh, I do that too, and no one's ever described it in such a way. So I love when people are listening to something and they realize that they are not the only person experiencing, that kind of issue.
Yeah, and so that's really why that resonates a lot with me and with my work, because while I don't focus specifically on ADHD, what I'm focusing on are those parts of the brain that impact our behavior connected to time and getting things done and moving forward in the future, our present choices connecting to future outcomes, all of those things that have to do with the brain and time.
Wait, Mary, are you telling me that the things that I do now affect my future?
Yes, Eric. The choices that we make today, right now, impact the future.
So how do I see my time? Do you know anything about this?
Yes, sweetheart, I know a lot about it. And so that's what my course ended up being about, was really, Ellen Arwood, actually way back, that was 20 years ago, challenged me that day to draw a picture of what I did in a week, because I was completely out of what I call out of time, not based in time. I was always late. I didn't have food in the refrigerator when I needed it. I remember my daughter telling me that one of her favorite or most memorable Christmases was the year we had no food in the house on Christmas Day, and we were driving around looking for food. And my husband was at work, and he'd grown up in Boston where they had Chinese food, on on Christmas Day. And so I went out looking for Chinese food. Well, in Southwest Portland, Oregon, there is no Chinese food open on Christmas Day, so we ended up with a Circle K ham sandwich. But so anyway, I was. It was. I
have a feeling that you just described a number of people's Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I had all these different challenges, and she then challenged me to first draw a picture of what I did in a week, and it was a chaotic picture. I don't have that picture to show you because we're in audio here, but I
do you have that picture though?
Oh yes.
If you send me that, I can actually post that on your episode show notes, and that would be great.
Absolutely. I call it my picture of a mind without time.
I cannot wait to see that.
Okay. So yeah, I start all my presentations that way. It's all my work. It's like, this is a mind without time. And everybody either looks at the picture and they go, oh dear, which is what Dr. Arwood said when she saw it. She goes, oh dear, I see a very bright woman who has no sense of herself in time and space. And other people look at it and go, mm-hmm, that's my life. So yes. So it took me a year to figure out what she wanted me to do. She told me to go home and take care of myself in time and space. And so I did that, and then my son had issues, and I started in a year's time, I completely changed my behavior. And then I worked with my son and my friends' kids, and then I became really well known for all these people showing up on my doorstep in Portland who needed help with what has become what's called executive functions. Okay, that's really not new to your ADHD crowd because that's really hot. Russell Barkley's always talking about it, But we didn't have that phrase to describe the phenomena. And that's why I had so much trouble in the early years trying to explain to people what it was that I was doing. And so I have this broad background in learning because I'm a teacher, and special education issues and all that stuff. But I'm really fascinated by the brain. And so, it's just taken over my life. And I love it because I love helping people go, oh, this is the problem. Can I teach them about their brain first? Oh, this is why I have this problem. Then we get into the tools and the strategies. And it's so much fun, Eric, because I get to watch people change. Just over a few weeks, the kids and families who have been at each other's throats, are walking in, talking. They're using tools. They're being much more supportive of themselves. So it's great fun.
And I think that's great because one of the things that I think that educating individuals about their brain is it changes the story that they tell themselves about why they are having the particular challenges that they're experiencing. Without the accurate information, the story that people often believe is they're lazy, not motivated, they're just scattered, but that's what it looks like on the outside. But, I find it amazing when I show people, there's a presentation that I give where I show people, I show a slide that asks the question lazy, and it just says the word lazy with a question mark. And then I show people a slide that shows a functional MRI scan that has, and explain to them, okay, when the brain is lighting up, that means it's working harder. Can you tell me which brain is working harder? And they point to the one that's working harder. And then I say, so could we agree that the one that's working harder is the one that's less lazy? And they all agree. And then I point out and then I show the labels for what these are. And that's the ADHD brain doing things that require most people a lot less effort.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's like, oh, this really is something going on in the brain. So understanding that really changes the story for a lot of people. One of these stories that you tell in your Seeing My Time workbook, which I just love, and I share this with a lot of families that I work with, and I think I maybe have borrowed it in a presentation
That's
that
all
I've
right.
given. Thank you. Is the idea of the folklore that kids are told and parents are told when they go to middle school.
Yes.
So I know, we have a lot of parents that listen to this. This podcast is focused on adults, but for those parents who are out there listening to this, or just for those adults who want to look back and make more sense of why school was so hard for them, will you share that folklore that you talk about in your book?
Sure. Because, and you're right, Eric. When I talk about when I talk about school and the impact of what's going on in school as a learner, it's really important for adults to go back and realize why they are the way they are. Because I know when the program I wrote was really started out thinking about kids, and then the parents joined in, and now adults use it. And I didn't think that the adults would want some of the background information that I talk about connected specifically to learning. But I've discovered over the years that they need that information because many of them are what I call wounded learners, and they don't understand why they had those challenges. So the story is this. This happens right at that middle school age, somewhere around 6th grade, and the parents show up at open house night or conferences, and an authority figure stands in front of them and says this: "It is time for you to back out. It is time for your child to grow up and take responsibility for getting their work done and starting their homework and turning things in on time. You need to step back, let them grow up. They're going to stumble a little bit, but don't worry. Well, it'll happen." And when I tell that story, the parents are sitting there nodding their heads up and down because that's what happened. But what I have just previously told my clients in my course is that the brain doesn't develop those executive skills of even caring about the future. This is the typical brain, not the ADHD brain. The typical brain doesn't even care that much about future planning and goals and controlling impulsive behaviors, all that stuff. It's a very young brain. And so I've told them that doesn't happen until 25 to 30 plus years old. Okay. So when I tell them, I look at the student and I say, so remembering what you learned about your brain and how it's not grown up yet, were you ready at 6th grade for your parents to just step back? And the kids go, no. And I say, that's right. It was not right. You were not ready. And so this is good news for you because you're not a bad, lazy, terrible person.
Right.
You're just a young person.
That is part of his educational system that is doing what it's always done, and so it's going to continue to do what it does. And despite the fact that brain science would suggest that having 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade students self-manage their own stuff, like it's developmentally inappropriate.
Yeah, it's totally crazy. And so after I've told because the demands are so high, that jumps a lot. The executive functioning demands really jump at that those grade levels. So I look at the parents after telling the kids, it's it's good news for you. I turn to the parents and say, it's bad news for you. And it's because they have to realize that this child is not going to be the adult. By the time the kid's in sixth grade, if those of you who are parents, you're ready for your kids to be grown up. It's like, you are tired of this. Go do it, please. I don't want to think about this. But the truth is you can't. And that's where we bring in people like you in terms of coaching. I say to the parents, you have to switch your role, not to be the controller, but more like the coach. So I explain, the analogy I use is learn to ride a bicycle. When a child first gets on a bicycle, usually the parents holding on, the parents alongside of them, and the kid don't let go. And then the kid takes off and they are in seventh heaven. Woohoo! They can't catch me. But I tell the kids, when that happens and you take off, your parents do not turn around and go in the house and shut the door. They're out there going, get out of the road, move over, car's coming, get on the sidewalk. They're still monitoring, and they're still teaching those skills. So parents who have young children, those of your parents, you can't just let go. You need to continue to coach more, on the sidelines. You don't want, a few skinned knees are okay, but you don't want them to crash and burn.
Yeah, because it's, we have to understand that we need to have more of a safety net around kids. And then let's move forward a little bit to college, because I know that there's a number of listeners listening to this who are college students, and I think some of the information in your Seeing My Time program is just brilliant for college students. I love how you talk about how really pulling out the key information from the syllabus and the tools that you use to kind of plan those papers. So would you talk a little bit about that? And I just think it's brilliant. Okay. And I love that you shared with me yesterday that when you wrote this program, you actually did not know much of the brain research. This is from all experience, and then you had that kind of validation of, all the stuff that I'm doing is completely backed by brain research. I just didn't know it at the time, and I think that's great. That's a sign of someone who just gets it.
Right. Well, was really interesting because, I'm not an academic. All my work was done around my dining room table, and when people wanted me to publish, I was like, but who's going to buy it? It's like, I'm just, but what I was really doing, Eric, it was research around my dining room table. I was actually, because of my teaching background and my understanding of how to build things in a sequential, scaffolded, multisensory, hands-on kind of way of doing things, I was just sitting there figuring out, okay, you don't get this, how do I teach you? So it's really interesting what came together for me those 4 or 5 years ago now was as I was figuring out how to teach it, science was out there, neuroscience was out there describing the phenomena, but they didn't know how to teach it. I do, because I've been doing it for 20 years. So the thing about the college students, and I'm gonna take some heat off the college kids here. Just know that your brain isn't fully matured yet, no matter ADHD or not, okay? College transition is hard for everybody. You are suddenly expected to manage time in a whole different way with a whole bunch of new fascinating distractions, okay? This freedom of, we all know what goes on college campuses.
What you want, when you want, how you want.
When you want it, how long you want it, whatever, whether it's good for you, bad for you, whether it has anything to do with school or not, those things are there, the temptations. So managing your time is really difficult. So it's a place where a lot of young people fail. There's failing points at middle school, going into high school, and going into college. And I will say even going into the workplace, because these transition years, you need another set of skills, another way of looking at time and managing yourself. So the college kids, it's going to be hard to kind of do this auditorially because I'm very visually oriented and my program's so hands-on. I have you like manipulating things. So I will try to do this carefully. So you guys might close your eyes and I will make
Unless you're driving, don't close your eyes.
Don't close your eyes. make this as visual as possible, and maybe you want to, if you have a pen and pencil, you might want to draw this out while I'm talking. Okay. I always have people draw their notes anyway. Draw pictures and images. Don't put much
And
words
I've
down.
talked about that in past podcasts. I think it's on episode 8 or 9 I have about drawing out your vision.
Yes.
And I actually have a picture of my my drawn out vision.
Yes.
About my goals, and that's actually on the episode for the show notes that I talked about that. If I can only remember which episode it was.
That's okay. I'm impressed you did that. So what happens when a professor gives you a syllabus that has probably, it can have upwards to 2,000 words in it, okay? Or not, well, upwards to 1,000 words. Yeah, 800 to 1,000 words. And what happens when you read those things is, first of all, your brain's going to shut down because it's like too many words, too much information. And your gut response is one of two things. It's like, ugh, I'll deal with this later when I have more energy and time. Okay, so you deep six it. You put it someplace where you're not going to see it again for a long time. It's like out of sight. And then, or the other emotion is, oh my God, this is too much work. I can't do it. And, it's scary. And so then you deep six it and get it out of sight and out of mind. And so you
deep six it. I don't know that phrase.
Deep six. What's deep six? Where's that come from? I'm not sure. Deep six is to put something deep down. Maybe it's like to bury
like
it.
6 feet under?
Like 6 feet under. I think
Got
that
it.
might be where it comes from.
I think
okay,
that's the
yeah,
first
I have
time
all
I've heard
kinds
that.
of weird euphemisms in my in my language. So yes, that's probably an old one. So you get all these words and you have this emotional response to just shut down because your brain doesn't want to see all of those words. And then you get into big trouble because you don't see the deadlines when they hit. You have no idea where they are. They're somewhere out there in the future. I know that maybe the term's getting moving and suddenly you go, oh my gosh, how can it be the midterm? Or, oh my gosh, how can this be done? So the strategy is to grab a piece of paper and a pencil and a dry erase marker. Okay, so you want those 4 things, and your instructions. And you want to read, actually, you want to take a look at your first sentence, and you want to look for your first punctuation mark in that sentence, or the first word and or. Okay, this gets a little complicated, like I said. You're looking for an and or an or, and the reason why you're looking for the and and the or is if a sentence has 2 ideas in it, they're connected with an or an and our brain will forget one of those ideas, okay, because it's overloading its working memory. So if you have an or an and, you want to stop, circle it. So let's say in my example, in my Saying My Time book, the example is a 6th grade project. And the first part of the sentence is, this project requires a written report on Egyptian pyramids. And something else. So I pause right there and I draw a picture of what I see in my mind when I see those words. This project requires a written report on Egyptian pyramids. So I draw a little rectangle with little squiggly lines representing writing, and the rectangle is a piece of paper, and I put a little pyramid on it, and I might write the word report next to it. So I have
you're
just
doing that so you can
it.
visually see what it is that you
I
need to be
visually
doing.
see what I'm doing is I'm slowing my brain down. Okay, this is a problem for an ADHD brain in one way. Is we're slowing our brain down and we're making it focus on just those chunks of words. A small chunk, okay? And most ADHD brains like to pause and draw. They like to do that kind of kinesthetic movement activity. So you've drawn it, and now you've really tied it to your brain, literally with a visual image in your brain of what you have to do. And then you go by and to the next punctuation mark and you circle that and you read those words and you likewise you draw what those are about, okay? And in my example, it would be build a model of a construction pyramid. So I would have a line down the middle of my page saying, here's the and line, okay? I've got to do this and I have to do a model. So then after I've drawn it, this is where I forgot to tell you, after I've drawn about the written report, I take my highlighter pen and I cover over that section of words that I just drew. And you're using the highlighter pen here differently. You're not highlighting what's significant. You're highlighting what you've already recorded. So it's holding your place. It's like a placeholder. I've handled these words. I'm not going to forget them. I've recorded them. Now I can move on to the next part of this sentence. And so you go through it little by little by little, each clause or each sentence, and you draw a little picture, or maybe put bullet points underneath the picture so that you get a clear idea of what you have to do. And by drawing out and getting a clear picture of what you have to do, it actually stops procrastination. Because when you start getting that full picture, you go, whoa, this is bigger deal than I thought it was. I better get started on this. Instead of imagining, I can do it. Time will stretch. I got a whole term. I got 3 weeks. I got a month. But if you don't really know what's inside that syllabus or what's inside those directions, then you're going to make an erroneous assumption quite often about the amount of time it's going to take. So that's what I do for making sure you see the assignment to stop procrastination. And then I take Post-it notes to break it up into pieces. So when I plan backwards, so I start with a picture of, and this is the picture part, of two little stick figures, both with happy faces. One's you, one's the teacher, and you have happy faces because you are turning in a quality product, and they are happy because you're on time. And then we go backwards. What was the last thing you did to turn that in? Well, you had to either press send, to get it to the teacher, or you had to put it in your backpack to take it to class. And this is a step a lot of people leave out. I mean, how many of you have left something on the table? How many of you have left something on your desktop that you thought you'd sent? So suddenly you clear out your your desktop, and there's that unsent email. All you had to do was press send, but it.
And Mary D, what I love too is that, a lot of us have heard of this idea of, begin with the end in mind. And we were talking about this yesterday. So that sounds great. And then, but you're left with, okay, so how do you do that? And what I will really say is your book will do that for people who are, and I'm telling you that I have been able to use in teaching this, because I've used your curriculum with a number of my clients. Right. I've gained a lot from it too. Oh, yeah. And really, I've always kind of liked to draw pictures to symbolize, some of the things that I need to do. But I think after reading your book, I really kind of took that to a whole new level. And I just think it's so, so powerful. And so when you begin with the end in mind, you can actually see what done looks like.
Exactly. And it's a motivator. Okay, it's a motivator, and then you start to go backwards, breaking it into little tiny pieces, asking yourself the question, what did I have to do just before this could happen? Mm-hmm. And then, but the other key thing to know that you have to do on each one of these Post-its, Eric, and this is what people leave off, is you have to consider the space of time. How much time does this space take? So that's where I draw a little circle on there to represent an analog clock. And so let's say putting it in the backpack, that doesn't take very much time. So, but it takes some time, particularly if you can't find your backpack, all right? So you got to go and you put a little sliver, like on the pizza pie.
To represent that time slice on clock.
The slice of time. Because time doesn't stretch, you guys. Everything takes up time. It takes up a space of time. So then likewise, you go through the whole process, stopping, thinking, how much time do I need to allow? How much time do I need to allow? Now, for you college students who are writing, this is how you do papers. I do teach paper. That's what's in Seeing My Time, is sort of a step-by-step how to do a paper. I want you to make sure that you multiply the amount of time you think it's going to take you to write. Because I write all the time, and writing takes a lot of time. So if you say, I can whip that out in half an hour, I want you to triple it. Okay.
That's what I often recommend too, because it does things, and here's the good news. If you overestimate and you're done early, congratulations, you can do whatever you want with that time.
Absolutely. I always go, woohoo!
And then the one other little gem, and then I want to take a quick break, is, sure. You also give people a really clear point on how to get started. And that first starting point is to take that syllabus and plan out the project. Like that's always the first starting point. So it's this idea that if you don't take that time to plan, that you're going to be spending so much time doing other things not related to achieving that goal or coming up with that end result. And you're just going to end up with a lot of time being stressed out, overwhelmed, and sleep deprived, especially for college students. Because I didn't have these skills when I was in college, and I've shared with my listeners that my freshman year of college, I almost failed out. My first semester, I had a 2.2. Then I decided to open up the books, and I got a 1.8. Then I got diagnosed with ADHD, and that explains a lot. I didn't have those skills. So, Mary D, I want to take a really quick break. I want to tell people about the upcoming coaching group that is coming up, and I want to thank our sponsor. The holidays are coming, and chances are you still have gifts to buy. Support this podcast and do your shopping on Amazon, but start by going through my website using the Amazon search tool. Go to erictivers.com/podcast. And when you start using the Amazon search tool at my website, you will go through Amazon the same way you're used to, except a small portion of your purchase will go to support this podcast.
Audible.trial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free download. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Trial.com/ADHD Rewired. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired for your free audiobook download.
Make 2015 your most productive year yet by joining the next ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group. Let me know you are ready to get your ADHD Rewired by going to erictivers.com/coaching rewired. That's erictivers.com/coaching rewired. And we are back. So we were just talking about some of the tips that we use in the Seeing My Time program. You were kind of mapping out for us some of the tools that you need when you're going through a syllabus to write a paper. You talked about having your pencil and pen, your dry erase marker, your highlighter, and to really kind of map out, starting with the end part, which is turning that assignment in and kind of extracting the key information from the syllabus, and beginning the whole process when you get an assignment with mapping it all out. Yep. And I just think it's a gem. And you have something to add.
I have something to add. Okay, the last part of that is you need to see the future. Remember we were talking earlier about what do I connect with the future? Well, I wish I had known this my first term or my college years, because I too struggled my first term. Take and print off, you guys, 3 months worth of calendars, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, whatever it is between grading periods. Just print them off, stick them on your wall in front of you. You need to see them. You need to keep time in front of you because your brain doesn't have time. So you want to see
say that last part one more time?
Your brain doesn't have time. Okay?
So important to understand. And it's okay.
It's okay. Just live with it. You get around. My brain has no time. Okay. You take away my tools and I'm a disaster. Okay. I lose days. I don't even know what happened to me. But you put my tools in front of me, I'm more effective than probably 95% of the people out there. But anyway, back to the calendar. I want to have a calendar in sight. And all I want to have on that calendar, and you should do this the first day of each semester. Okay. On the first day of each semester, as soon as you get your syllabus, you go through that syllabus and you put all of the due dates for exams and papers. So that you can, and you might color code them, history might be green and, math might be red or whatever. But you want to be able to see in front of you the whole term and when those exams are and when those project type assignments are due. That will help you tremendously.
One of the things that I do when I'm working with college students is I go through this process with them at the beginning of their semester, and I tell them I want you to have
pull out every key piece of information from your syllabus with enough confidence that as soon as you are done with that project, you can throw your syllabus away. I want you to have everything accessible on your whether it's on your phone, your calendar, including your professor's office hours. Every key piece of information needs to be in one place.
Great. Yeah. Good advice.
So when you're talking about seeing into the future, some of the kind of organizational systems that you also help people with, including adults, and we were talking right before I think we hit record about where do you put that piece of paper that you don't know what to do with. And as I was looking around my office, how many piles can I count of, how many pieces of paper do I have just in my arm's reach that I'm like, what do I do with this? So impart some wisdom onto us, please.
Okay, well, that's a challenge. And as I was sharing with you, I'm not actually perfect on this one either. I'm pretty darn good now about my piles. I used to say, you open my front door and I'd say, welcome to my piles. But I don't do that anymore. I'm much saner and calmer with having the place organized. I figured out how to do that. But I still have challenges with these little odd pieces of paper that show up in the office. I can sit here. It's like, do I keep this 50% off coupon for, which actually now has expired, so I can throw that one away.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one. So what I recommend, I'm going to actually be sharing with you a video. I'll be giving you a link to a video that I have on how to use a tickler file. And tickler files are just a way of creating a temporary holding spot for those pieces of paper. It's like, I don't want to think about it and decide today. I'll do it next month. And you stick it in January or, February. I'll do it on Friday. So you stick it in the date for Friday. Because some things don't need to be decided upon and some things it's not worth scanning it. It's not worth, it's not worth making a file folder for it. But you need to have it surface again. Because while the tickler file works is you open it up your file folder for each day of the month. So like if it's the 5th of the month, you open up the 5th, and if there's any pieces of paper in there, you take a look at them and say, oh, I need to deal with this today. Or, I don't know what to do with this. I'll do it next week. And you just move it ahead. But it's just a place to store those pieces of paper that you're anxious about not wanting to lose sight of.
So that link that you're going to share, it's going to be on my website under the show notes for this episode, which will be erictivers.com/whatever episode number this happens to be. I haven't seen that far into the future yet to know which episode this is going to be. So just look down at your podcast player and see what number this is. And that link will be there right in the show notes. And thank you for sharing that with my audience. Now I'm looking to plan B because I feel, okay, so we're getting near that end point, and I want to see if there's anything that I have not asked you about that I wanted to ask you about. Because that moment where you leave, you're with someone, then you leave, or you hang up the phone, and as soon as you do, it's, I wanted to ask that person about so-and-so.
Well, I know what I want to tell you.
Yes.
And that's the analog clock story. Do we have time for a quick analog clock story?
We have time for a quick analog clock story.
Okay. All right. The importance of clocks in your universe came to me I'm over 30 years ago. I've been married 32 years, okay? 32 years ago, digital technology was brand new. And, you could spend over $1,000, you guys, for a digital watch. The cheap ones were $350, okay? And people go, what? Yeah, really, I'm that old. So anyway, there was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist named Richard Feynman. He was a theoretical physicist, and he was being interviewed on NPR, and the topic was the impact of technology change on culture. And he made the most outrageous statement that I never forgot it. He said this: the digital clock, this was the hot new thing then, the digital clock will be the downfall of civilization. And I thought, the downfall of civilization? I mean, I could see nuclear war, I could see, but, a digital clock. And he said that the problem with the digital clock was that it only shows you one picture of time. It only shows you right now, the present. Whereas if you look at an old-fashioned analog clock, that's the face clock with, the hands and the numbers going around, that clock shows you what time it is right now, and it shows you the future. That's that future thing that this ADHD brain, no future. Okay, so you've got to see it coming. You see it on the clock. Okay, how many more minutes before I have to go? And it also gives you reference to the past. How long have I been here? So it gives you this past, present, and future component. And Feynman said this. He said, what's going to happen to our culture is it's going to become obsessed with instant gratification. Well, I don't want to say for the future.
So far off from
I don't want to say for the future. I don't want to pay for infrastructure. I don't want to, I want the big house I can't afford. It's just, not really thinking about that future component, only wanting what we want right now, which really is dangerous for our ADHD brain, because that is just, that brain is only living in the present. And so the challenge that you have with an ADHD brain is connecting yourself to that future visually so that you can make better choices, so the future doesn't sneak up and bite you.
That's great. That's great. I don't think I told you this when we were talking yesterday. So I have a clock in my office, and it's an analog clock that has a glass surface and a metal, actually magnetic frame to it. And what I can do, and will often do, is I will take a dry erase marker and color in the slice of time that I need to be kind of keeping track of. And I can take magnets and kind of put markers around those other kind of areas of time that I need to be seeing. And it's great.
Wow, cool. I love that. I'm gonna steal that one.
Please do, because I stole that from I'm blanking on her name, but I saw her talk about it at a social thinking conference, and I just thought that was brilliant.
Michelle Garcia Winner?
No, it wasn't her. It was
okay.
I think her first name is Sarah, and I wish I can give her the full credit that she deserves for sharing,
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
So it's just a regular glass face clock with a metal rim that is magnetic. Oh, and I love it. And be
careful what surface you draw on the little corner, because it might not work so well and come off on all surfaces.
Right, it has to be glass because the plastic won't work so well.
Yeah.
So now, Mary D, we are going to move into the part of the show that we call the random question round. This is the part of the show that has nothing to do with ADHD, which then paradoxically has everything to do with ADHD. Are you ready?
I am ready.
The first question I'm going to ask you in the random question round is one that I will often ask in this part of the show, and that is, if you had an invention, what would that invention be?
Ooh. I'll give this invention away. Somebody's going to make $1 million on it. I'd have the invention I would have would be a time screen an app that would be a touch app that would be able to manage past, present, or future events and projects all in one place, but big enough that everybody could see it. Because little clocks, little phones and things aren't big enough to really manage time very well. And the tablets aren't either. And the reason they can't is that it's because of working memory. It requires you to switch tasks, and every time you have to switch screens and tasks, something falls off your working memory. So I want a giant wall-shaped thing that I can just manipulate all the things that I need to do, kept in one place.
Cool. Okay.
So if anybody wants to work on me, let me know.
I'm kind of coming up with some ideas as we think. All right. So my next question is, if you could create a yoga pose, because I know that you are into yoga, what would that pose be if it were named after you?
One of my assistants calls me the Ever Ready Bunny. So I'm not sure how you'd have an Ever Ready Bunny pose. Maybe it would be the standing pose with my arms out, ready to play drums.
I was kind of picturing like you kind of bending at the knees and like ready to like launch into action like a bunny would.
Oh, that could be a good one too. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I came up with. He doesn't prep you guys. He doesn't let you know what's coming. Okay,
Well,
what else?
I don't even know what's coming. I am making these up as I go.
Okay, great.
Okay. If we decided to add one day to the weekend, what day would that be?
You mean in terms of making a new name for it, or would I multiply a day?
Sure.
I would make free day.
Free day.
Free day after Friday.
Okay, so that's in between Friday and Saturday. It's free day.
Between Friday and Saturday would be free day. And you're not allowed, nobody's allowed to make any appointments for you, and you're not allowed to make any appointments on free day.
So it's kind of like the Sabbath.
It's kind of like the Sabbath, but
the secular version.
And yeah. Well, yeah, secular version, and it's really hard to keep the Sabbath. But this would be true for everybody. Everybody. This is like across the board. Secular, not religious, but just your day. No appointments are allowed.
Just to be. No obligations, just be.
No obligations, just be.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
If you could learn a brand new skill and become an expert at a certain area that you currently know very little or even nothing about, what would it be?
Animation. I just taking this course on how to do animations in Keynote, and I'm having so much fun making these little things bounce across the page. And so my new ambition, I told my employees the other day, I want to quit everything, you guys, and become an animator, and my goal is to work for George Lucas, Lucas Films.
That's fantastic. I was just picturing, so when I was in like third grade, I created this little flip book of a football being kicked into a field goal. And I just thought it had a powerful impact that I still remember it to this day. That's very cool. So, Mary D, we are unfortunately out of time because time, it doesn't stretch as much as I sometimes try to make it stretch. It doesn't. It has the confounds of the limitations of those 24 hours that are in that day, the 60 minutes that are within the hour, and we are coming to the end. So before we go, I want to thank you again for your time, and will you let the listeners know of ADHD Rewired where they can reach you should they want to get in touch with you?
Okay, you can reach me at my website. It's a horribly long name. It's hard to spell, so be patient. ExecutiveFunctioningSuccess.com. But you can probably Google my name, Mary D. It's one word, MaryDee. The last name is Sclar, Sklar, and that should get you to Executive Functioning Success.
And if you go to my website, I will have a link to all the places that you can reach Mary D. So you just, if you're listening to this on your podcast app, just click on the episode you're listening to, and in the abbreviated version of the show notes, you'll see a link that you can contact her right from there.
Right. And I'm on Facebook and all that stuff, too, so you can look for me there.
And Mary D, I will be asking you to join us in the ADHD Rewired Facebook community. I do ask all my past guests to come join us because it's a growing and vibrant community, and people will truly love talking with you. And this has been a lot of fun, and I think that my brain's racing right now because you kind of reminded me of certain things that I kind of want to get back to, and you just have such great stuff. I want to just congratulate you on your success and on your new book. And you did say it may soon be on Audible.
Well, I want it to come out on Audible. Yes, I'm working on that process right now. It's on the Tips book for parents is on Amazon. It's in a Kindle version as well as a paper version.
Oh, great. And as soon as that does, links will be on my website. And
yes.
And again, congratulations and thank you. And that's all the time that we have.
Go forth. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, ADHD Rewired community, I just want you to know that I think you, yes, you listening right now, yes, I am talking to you, You're awesome. I want to thank everyone that has reached out to me via email and shared your story. I've got a lot of emails this week from people sharing their story, and a lot of people letting me know that they're interested in the Rewired coaching group. It really is amazing hearing your personal story and how this podcast has been just one part of what you're doing to help yourself and your ADHD get rewired. So thanks for all those messages that you've sent me. If you haven't done so already, please head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave a quick rating and review. It's a small action that you can make that makes a huge impact on others because it helps other people find this podcast. Tell me, how do you get your ADHD rewired? Tell listeners, where do you live? Something that you've gained from the podcast, and even maybe share a suggestion on what would make it better. If you can do this in 90 seconds or less, you might be featured on an upcoming episode of ADHD Rewired. To record your message, go to speakpipe.com/ADHD Rewired, or click the link in your podcast app, or just go to my website. There's a link there. We are on Facebook. Like our Facebook page and submit your request to join our growing community. And please, check your other inbox because my response to your request might be stuck there. If you live in the Northern Illinois area, you are invited to CHAD of Northern Illinois. We meet on the third Monday of every month in Grays Lake. We are on Facebook and meetup.com, or just check the show notes for a link. If you're not in this area, go to chad.org and see if there is a support group in your area. And don't forget, if you would like to be a part of the next ADHD Rewired coaching and accountability group, let me know at erictivers.com/coaching rewired. That's erictivers.com/coaching rewired. And if you haven't signed up for my email newsletter, now would be a really good time to do so. That's all I got for this week. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening. Until next time.